Hello to all my story lovers. Welcome back in Story Time channel. Today's story name is A Lame Escape by Rangin Singh. It happened so fast that for a moment Mukti was totally flabbergasted. The only one to get off her bus stop. Mukti carefully deboarded and the school bus drove away. She hastened towards her house nearby when suddenly a big hand clamped her mouth. She could not even utter a scream as she was forcibly dragged to a waiting car and pushed into the back seat. The next minute, two other men get in after her and the car crazily zoomed away. Mukti registered her captors, but in vain. Desperate, she threw a glance behind. She saw her security guard chasing the car. She now regretted her decision, for it was because of Mukti's insistence that the security guard usually waited for her at her house gate instead of at the bus stop, as Mukti did not want her schoolmates to see her being escorted by a security guard as she was a minister's daughter. Mukti observed the inside of a car in which she was being kidnapped. It was zipping away as the man driving it had pressed the accelerator to the optimum. As they swerved in mad burst of speed, one captain muttered, "You should have killed the guard. He must have seen the car number, and who knows, he may have already reported this to police." The other replied in a gutter voice, "Boss said no blood." Then he talked to someone on his mobile, apprising him that the guard had seen them, and then he listened for some time. Mukti was trembling now as the enormity of what had happened sank into her. She felt trapped, like being sucked into the vortex of a whirlpool as she sat squashed between the two sweaty, evil smelling ruffians. As her heart filled with fear, inadvertently she remembered her father telling her not to commute by bus because of security concern. She had flatly refused, as she always rebelled against the extra security that forever dogged her footsteps because she was the daughter of a famous politician. Her mother had pleaded with her, "Please don't be so stubborn, Mukti. We are saying this for your safety. You can go by car. You know, with your Jaipur food, you can face a problem. Why do you have to remind me every day that I am a lamb?" Mukti had burst out. "Why can't you let me feel normal? Don't pity me and be overprotective towards me all the time. I will commute by bus however difficult it is for me, and that is final. I want to live like an ordinary citizen and not like a spoiled, overprotected daughter of minister. I study in class 8, and for God's sake, give me a break." Mukti had yelled, confident in the belief that her mother did not have an iota of trust that she could manage her own. Mukti now understood her mother's anxiety about her safety. "So I walked right into the bed my parents had been warning me about," thought Mukti, tears pouring down her face. She now wished she had not been stubborn and heeded her parents' advice. She felt like a fool for walking into the trap of these ruffians. Then she thought what is done cannot be undone, and that she could keep her wits about her. Suddenly, the car in which she was being taken swerved sharply, bringing her to her senses. Then it suddenly stopped to one side, and once again, hand claps her mouth, and two pairs of arms bodily lifted her out of the car. Mukti had no time to resist as they rushed her up the lonely road. They carried her hastily to another waiting car and dumped her unceremoniously into it. She noticed that the engine of the car was running all the time while the men were trying to get in. Mukti felt this was the opportune moment to escape. She tried to jump out, but her foot, being at an awkward angle, hit something and she felt severe stab of pain. This gave the man time to drag her back into the car. Mukti struggled to pull herself away as the man slapped her and the car took off in a great speed. She mentally willed herself to forget her panic. I must be alert. I must see where the car is going. I must see these people carefully so that I can recognize them later. But will there be a letter or will they kill me? Mukti was shivering. Her mind was blank. Would she survive this ordeal? The thought sickened her and she nearly passed out with fright. Then an idea took shape in her mind. I must escape. I have got myself into this. I must get out of it myself. Mukti straightened herself up and became alert, not wanting to miss an opportunity to escape. The car stopped at a traffic signal. Mukti's instincts told her this was the time to escape. It was now or never. Trying not to think about her handicap, she made a sudden dive for the car door. She had opened it when two men caught her. She struggled with all the strength she could muster, but the men held her firmly. Mukti saw some passers-by and tried to shout for help through the window, but the man sitting next to her clasped his hand tightly on her mouth. She beat his hand and started yelling for help, but then he slapped her so hard that for a few moments her head swam. Mukti now fully understood that the kidnappers were not to be trifled with as the man put a revolver on her forehead and growled menacingly, "Not another word. I will kill you if you try this again." This really quietened Mukti down and made her feel even more nervous, for she realized that the man meant what he said, that she was in abject danger. She also feared that because of ruffians had preempted the guard's action and changed the car as they were certain he would have reported the car's registration number and the police would already be on the job tracking them. It was clear they were a set of determined criminals and that all this was meticulously planned. Mukti sobered down and assessed the situation, telling herself this was not the time to nurse her thoughts but to think and act sensibly. She looked around and observed her kidnappers. Two were sitting, one on either side of her in the back seat. Two were sitting in front. One was the driver and the other was stinking man who sat beside him. They all had pistols. Mukti was so afraid now. She wanted to scream, but she knew these four men would not hesitate to hurt her. They then drove through unfamiliar roads and Mukti lost her bearings. After several left and right turns, they drove the car straight into a narrow lane of a dirty locality and stopped bang in front of an old building. Throughout the journey, she had tried to make her captors believe that she had resigned to her fate. Now the man seated next to her opened the door and quietly led her out. Mukti saw her chance. Just as she stepped out, she beat the man's hand and sprinted away with all her strength, even though her foot hurt badly. She ran on as fast as she could, but now all of them were running after her. She tried to dodge the two behind her, but the other two pounced on her and caught her. Their hold was so tight that Mukti could not move as much as even an inch. She was quickly dragged up 3 flights of stairs into a small flat. Two people opened the door when the captors rang the bell. Mukti was roughly pushed in. She decided to carefully study the layout of the flat they had stepped into. There was a hall in which the men were standing and the kitchen on the other side, which seemed to be bare except for a stove and some utensils. Then she was taken towards the door of a room. She tried to resist yet again, and the man next to her slapped her, shouting, "Keep quiet! Do what we say!" They threw her into the room and bolted the door after her. She rubbed her cheek and felt like howling with pain and helplessness. After about 10 minutes, she heard one of them call her father. "Hello, we have your daughter in our custody. You have to pay a ransom of 1 crore. If don't pay, we kill her. Get the money quickly and await further instruction." Mukti sat petrified. 1 crore? Where would her honest father get so much money from? Overwhelmed with emotion, she thought dejectedly, "Dad can't pay so much. These people will kill me. Oh, I don't want to die." She cried and cried till she realized it would not help her, and she pulled herself together. "What is the use of crying?" Mukti scolded herself. "It will not help me get away from these brutes. I must think. Physically, I may be weaker because of my foot, but I have a mind. I must help myself and not wait stupidly for help to arrive. I must plan to get away." She started looking around for ways to protect herself and escape from her captors. Mukti saw that there was only one door through which they had pushed her inside the room. First thing first, she quickly bolted the door from inside without the slightest of sound. Mukti knew that these hulks could easily kick open the flimsy door. She looked around. The room was bare except for a chair. She sat down as a sudden wave of fatigue swept over her. Her only hope was a window that had a strong grill with narrow bars, but it was too high up and hard to reach. "There is no way out, or is there? I must think positively. What do I have which I can use to get out?" Mukti asked herself over and over again. She started considering all the objects she had with her. She had just her uniform that she wore and tie around her neck. In the room there was one chair, one window with bars, and one mattress with one sheet. She felt her pockets and found a pen inside one of them. That was it. But all this was not enough to get help. No, she told herself. She was wrong. This would be enough to get help if she applied her mind to it. Mukti began to think what she could do, and soon she converted her thoughts into action. She carried the chair to the high window and found that her hand could reach the lowest bar. Mukti took off her tie and wrote "help" on it. Then, with great difficulty, she tied it to the lowest bar of the grill. After that, stretching to the maximum, she twisted the tie outside, hoping that it would wave like a flag. Her muscles started aching because of stretching, and she sat down to recup. After 5 minutes, she took half the bed sheet and started tearing it into small pieces. On each piece, she wrote "help me." She then climbed the chair and started pushing the pieces down. Then she waited. But there was no response, and her heart gave a sob. It was a fatal. No one had seen those pieces of cloth, or they would have come by. Then she frowned at herself and thought, I should not be depressed. I should be positive. I must try more. She knitted her brows and thought deeply. I should provide some more details on these pieces. My kidnapping may be flashed on television. She tore a quarter of sheet and wrote on it, I am Mukti, please help me. Then she hung the piece of cloth in the lowest bar. Then she tore the rest of the sheet into pieces as well and wrote on them, Help, kidnap, 6 kidnappers, Mukti. Then she wrote her father's name and telephone number on the pieces. Mukti threw down all the torn pieces of cloth and sat down with a lot of hope and confidence. But no one came. Now she was sad and scared. She feared her captors may come for any minute when they discover what she had been doing. In sheer desperation, she pulled up the torn mattresses and took out the cotton wool from it. Now she started pelting the cotton wool down the window. She stopped only when she had emptied out the mattress completely. All this climbing on the chair made her foot ache terribly, and she realized the stub of her legs where the Jaipur foot was attached was now bleeding. Mukti took off the Jaipur foot and flinched as she wiped the blood with her handkerchief. But quickly she wore her Jaipur foot again just in case she needed to move quickly. Hope fled through her as she thought that someone might have read her pleas for help. Yet for a long time there was no response. What more could she do? Now she had nothing that could help. No one would hear her shout. She had no choice but to wait and pray. It was a long wait, and then, when her hunger and fear were making it unbearable, suddenly she heard a shout and a door being thrown open. Then she heard many gunshots and screams. She placed the chair against the door and leaned to the left, afraid that her captors may come in and use her as a hostage. She dared not open the door. She heard shouts again, and then everything was quiet. After some moments, someone was banging at the door. Open the door, shouted man's voice. Mukti kept quiet and didn't respond. Then she heard the voice say, Open, police. She still did not trust. The man shouted, How do I know you are from the police? There was a relief in the voice as man said, Oh, thank God, she is there. She is alive. Another voice asked, Are you Mukti? Mukti replied in affirmative. Open the door, please, shouted the voice. I want to call my father first, shouted Mukti. She saw a mobile being slid under the door. She grabbed it and talked to her father. Mukti sensed the relief in her father's voice as he replied, Oh, Mukti, my darling child, thank God you are safe. These peoples are from the police. You can trust them. Come out, Mukti. Come home. We have been so worried about you, said her father. I love you, Dad, sobbed Mukti. I love you, my child. Come home fast, sobbed her father. Her mother came on the line and cried in relief. Oh, Mukti, thank God. You are safe. I love you, my darling. I hope they didn't hurt you. Come home fast. Yes, Mom, I'm coming. I love you, Mom, sobbed Mukti. Mukti then opened the bolt and limped out of the door. She saw 6 policemen and no sign of the captors. The police officer said, I am Anupam Dayal. Your captors have been taken prisoners. Now I will take you home. How did you find out where I was? Asked Mukti. The officer answers, Thanks to your ingenuity. You threw down pieces of clothes with the phone number of your father. There is a market beyond these flats where the pieces of the clothes fell. A shopkeeper noticed the pieces of cloth and then saw your school tie and details on the sheet. He had heard the news of your kidnapping on the TV. He read what you had written. He then called your father on the number you had given. I must say, Mukti, you are a very brave and intelligent kid. You even told us there are six kidnappers, which help us plan our attack. But Mukti did not feel brave at all when she reached home. She felt she was a little child who needed her parents' love and reassurance. Her knees sagged and she fell into the arms of her father and cried her heart out, unmindful of the television camera's focus on her. Then she held her mother and whispered, I really love you both very much. And before she could complete what she wanted to say, she blanked out and fainted. It took her few days and some medical attention to become her normal self again and resume her life. Two major changes took place in Mukti after this incident. First, she realized that she can tackle any situation despite being physically challenged. And two, she realized that her parents' fear were not unfounded and that it is always wise to be careful. This is the end of the story. Do you like it? Then comment it. Subscribe my channel. Bye bye.